The question that I'm going to talk about is the difference between a lady and a flower girl is not how she behaves, but how she's treated. And do I agree? And yes, I agree. All Professor Higgins wanted to do is to prove that his ability of making change possible. And he couldn't care less what becoming of Eliza. Even when Mrs. Higgins asked him about it, he didn't seem to bother. Before the lesson started, both Colonel Pickering and Mrs. Pierce thought of the problem. However, Professor Higgins answered, "When I've done with her, we can throw her back to the gutter and that it will become her business again." And this is in page 35, line 10. And I think Professor Higgins was selfish and self-centered. All he cared about was winning the bet. Colonel Pickering has asked him, "Does it occur to you, Higgins, that the girl has some feelings?" And this is in page 34, line 26. This showed that Colonel Pickering was more humane. Eliza felt that no matter she behaved like a flower girl or a duchess, Professor Higgins always thought of her as a flower girl. And the way he treated Eliza made her live without dignity, because no matter how hard she tried, in her heart she was always a person in a low position, social position. Professor Higgins regarded Eliza merely as an object, a bet that he couldn't afford to lose. To achieve his goal, he did manage to rebuild Eliza's speech and manners as well. That's why Eliza would strongly sense not being respected. However, when Eliza was beside Colonel Pickering, she felt like as a lady toward his attitude to her. Even from the beginning, before her transformation, Colonel Pickering showed great esteem to her. To conclude, if people treat a lady as a flower girl, then that lady is inferior to a flower girl. Yet a sense of illumination will bring out if the flower girl has been treated the other way around.
And here we're going to talk about Eliza's, Freddie's, and Clara's changes. Okay, here we'll first start with Eliza's changes, and we'll have 5 topics: language, education, appearance, dressing, and personal values. And first start with language. At first, we can see that Higgins described Eliza's language as a gutter and humiliate the England time like Shakespeare's language. And in the past, she can't pronounce well, and she can't pronounce the sound of H. We can see some example on the left side. And after being educated, she can speak fluently. And on page 62, she speaks with pedantic correctness of pronunciation and great beauty of tone. And in Acts 3 and 4, we can see the great transformation in the embassy party. And people there mistook her as a princess. Okay. Education. At past, she can only say something like, "I'm a good girl, I am." She just emphasized something she knew about. And at Act 2, she tried to receive some education, but at the fight she was shocked and scared most of the time, and she didn't know what Higgins means, like the 60 pounds on page 30. And in Act 5, she begins with the initiation of the tug of wars and knows what they are talking about and fights her back and fights back with her rights, and she learns some instrument like playing the piano on page 69. And through the education, she gets know more about herself and have self-assert. Obviously. Okay. Appearance and dressing. In the past, she was just only a lower class girl. We can see some example on page 27. She wears apron and shoddy coat and a weird taste. When she went to Piggin's house, she wore a hat with 3 colors, orange, red, and blue. And now she is a lady and a duchess. And at the embassy party on page 74, she wears jewels and her beautiful dress, and she can behave herself, walk and walk like a lady. Okay. Personal values. At first, at the end of Act 1, we can see her room with a portrait of popular actor and a fashion of lady's dress and also a bird cage. And after that, we can see she gets more. She takes taxis and she knows more about the money. And on page 87, she's talked to Freddie about you should never go out with 10 pounds in your pocket, which she learned from the colonel. And this shows her values to her money. She knows the importance of money in the past, but she cannot use well. And after she received education and lived with Higgins and Pickering, she can get more use about money, and she knows how to use them and emphasize the point of using money. And I think the most important part is that on page 76, I have lost your bet, but nothing can make me the same as these people, because she thinks that she still has some differences between the real upper class people or some middle class people.
I'm going to talk about Freddie's changes. At the beginning, he was like a coward. He was scolded harshly by two women, his mother and his sister, because he couldn't have a taxi for them. He even was called a selfish pig by his sister. However, after he met Eliza, he spent most of his nights waiting outside of the door for her. He had courage to kiss Eliza. Besides, he ran away with Eliza and protected Eliza from constables. Love changes him.
Okay, now I'm going to tell you some about Clara's changes. And there are two examples in the book. In Pygmalion, I think Clara is more like a minor character. She didn't say too much things. Therefore, I found a very interesting part and want to focus on it. In Act 1, Clara's attitude toward Eliza was not very polite and somehow showed her disrespectful to Eliza. For example, on page 14, line 7, she said, "Sixpence thrown away. Really, Mama, you might have spared Freddie like that." Then she retreated in disgust behind the pillar. This incident shows that Clara looked down on her and didn't really care about the flower girl's feelings. But in Act 3, we can see that Clara's attitude toward Eliza totally changed because Eliza's position and social statute is different now. And Eliza has become a beautiful lady. On page 66, after Eliza said some words which were quite inappropriate, Clara said something like this to support Eliza. It's on page 66. "It's a matter of habit. There is no right or wrong in it, and it's so quaint, and gives such a smart emphasis to things that are not in themselves very witty. I found the new small talk delightful and quite innocent." In this part, I think Clara's attitude had changed a lot because the changes of Eliza was not only a flower girl anymore. Thank you.
Maybe we'll wait a bit on the changes that happened to Clara in the sequel. This is something I'll talk more about in the conclusion part. And about Freddie, yes, maybe you can say that he turns from a coward or a good-for-nothing to one who is protective and very loving. But maybe, I think at least from Higgins' perspective, he's always useless. Okay, so I think this is something to keep in mind. You don't need to agree with Higgins, but that's one perspective available in the text. Okay, so let's move on. About this question, my answer, I think when I read your midterm one, and this will be the same with whenever I'm reading your journals or midterm papers, and that is as long as you provide your reasons, substantial reasons, I don't mind you are disagreeing with me. So for instance, I just now Tiffany right, said yes, and she gives good reasons. I think, was it Tiffany or Felicity? Yeah. She talks about how Higgins does not treat Eliza as a lady, and that has some negative impact on her. Okay, so that's one perspective. And I'm looking at it more generally in terms of human interactions or social roles, how we are, like a teacher, a student, a daughter, a mother, etc. And I don't see any of these roles as essential. You are not born to be a student. You are not born to be a mother or a loving mother. There can be mothers and mothers, etc., etc. So I see all of them as social roles. Okay, so I think that's one perspective. You don't have to agree with me. Okay, so when I said that, yes, the difference between a lady and a flower girl is not how she behaves, but how she's treated. Yes, because one's social identity is relational. 相对的，或者是就在人际关系中间产生的，the results of social interactions. We cannot insist on a certain identity unless we are recognized as such. For instance, I cannot be a teacher without students, right? And you may not. Well, it's hard to say. You can be a lifelong student without teachers, and that's for sure. And that makes you more powerful than I. Because as teachers, we need students. But as students, you don't need teachers. You don't necessarily need teachers. Okay. So I think that's a good perspective to keep in mind. Okay. Unless you are recognized as such, then your identity may not be real or functional in this society. Okay. Or sometimes we get to be recognized like as a master of arts, 硕士, 学士, through some rituals, so that you feel that you don't graduate without a commencement. 就没有毕业典礼就不像是毕业了. Okay, so some rituals, some human interactions can help confirm our sense of social identity. So in that sense, what Eliza says is true. Okay, but then since social identity is mutual or relational, then we ourselves will need to use signs to establish our identities. We cannot keep asking the others to recognize us as a certain person. For instance, if you want to be recognized as a good student, then you need to send out signs to prove that you are a good student. Okay, so the signs and messages that you send, when people receive them and then when they interpret them properly or correctly, then the communication is established, and then your identity gets confirmed. So this is my way of interpreting social identity in response to Eliza's question, and that's why I said that for me, her two arguments there show indeed that she's a lot more intelligent than the way she behaves in Act 1 and 2 when she was only a flower girl. But neither of the 2 points she made in Act 2, in Act 5, are completely correct, or they can be flawed, because at the moment she said that, no, I will not make the relapse, the very next moment she said, ow, when she sees her father. Okay, so I think that this is very interesting, how Bernard Shaw tries to undermine all the characters he confirms, including Higgins and then Eliza's. They always say something true about their interactions, but their arguments are not completely true. Okay, they are all in a way partial truths.